And now, here's the host of the God, Family, and Country radio show, Lance Hoppus.
And good evening. This is the God, Family, Country radio show right here on 930 AM. The Answer. That's 930 AM, The Answer. I'm Lance Hoppus, and I have sitting here with me, again, thank goodness, Roy White, retired Lieutenant Colonel Roy White. When you tune into this radio show, what you're going to hear is you're going to always hear, first and foremost, the reason that this show was ever put together. And it's because I was inspired by the fact that I felt that God wanted this message and the messages that come out on this radio program to be sent out to every single one of you as an enlightenment for Americans to be able to hear. There's a purpose for the United States. And the purpose for the United States is to continually carry God's word forward around the world. And the message that he wishes and desires to have sent forward is always the message of his Son, Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God. Now, there's only one God, folks. There's only one God. It isn't Allah. It isn't Buddha. It isn't anybody else. And I don't mean this to be offensive to anyone, but a fact is a fact. There's only one God. It's the God of, his name is Yahweh, Elohim, the Alpha, the God that put the stars where they are, hung the sun where it is, the moon where it is, created earth, created you, created me. That's the true God, not Allah. Those of you who think that all gods and Allah is the same, it's a big mistake, folks. That's just not simply the case. We talk on this radio program a lot about Islam and about the Muslim world, and we want you to know and understand completely that we have no ill feelings and harbor no ill feelings or wish no harm towards the people of the Muslim faith. We don't agree with it, okay? But we wish no harm. As a matter of fact, we wish we could reach every one of them out there, every one of you, if you're listening, who is of the Muslim belief, and be able to take the word of Jesus Christ to you. But first and foremost, God is always preeminent in the United States. He's on our buildings of government. He's in our Congress. He's in our Supreme Court. He's in our Senate. He is chiseled in stone on the lintels of the doorways of Congress. He's chiseled into the doors themselves, those great wooden doors that go into Congress, that go into Senate. And he's on our money. In God we trust. So that being said, Roy, we have an interesting guest with us today. It's a guest that you brought on. He has also an interesting name, the Gray Man.
The Gray Man, and we have the Gray Man on line with us. We're going to be chatting with him in a moment. Lance, I just want to say thanks again for having us.
Well, thank you, Roy.
Giving us this time to talk about what is so important to us as Christians and to a group that we're here in San Antonio called G416 Patriots. And you can learn more about us by writing to us at G416patriots@gmail.com. And we get our name from Galatians 4:16. Paul, when he returned to Galatia the second time and talking to the people there, the Jews who had heard his message the first time and realizing to accept Jesus Christ, is they needed to put their faith in him and accept that Jesus Christ was the Son of God and that died for our sins. Well, and that was all it was going to be required of them. There wasn't any great rituals that needed to occur. There wasn't any other type of indoctrination. They had to believe in their heart that this was the Son of God, and he died on the cross for our sins. Well, when Paul came back the second time, in the interim, doubt had been placed into the mind of the Galatians, and the Galatians began to hear from naysayers that saying, well, only Jews can really become Christians. Those are the only people who can really become Christians. And so when Paul came back the second time, he faced this narrative and was looking at these people, and he was saying exactly the same thing he had been saying before, the truth. And that was to become a Christian, to have life everlasting, you merely have to accept that Jesus Christ, open up your heart, ask for forgiveness of your sins, and realize that he is the Son of God. And they were saying, no, you need to also be a Jew. Well, that would leave out pagans. It would leave out the Gentiles. It would leave out, so many others. And again, it was this exclusivity that Paul was saying, no, that's mistaken. Well, now the crowd, the Galatians now suddenly turned against him. And as he said in Galatians 4:16, he says, I am now your enemy for telling you the truth. So we in America, we as Christians, there's 64 million Christians, and only half of those are registered to vote. And only half of those went out to vote. And we need to let people know we need to be telling the truth. And that's what we do with G416 Patriots. We talk about the truth as it relates to Christianity and Islam, not out of a hatred for Muslims, but because we love Muslims. We love non-Muslims. We have a duty as an American. As I took an oath as a military officer to protect and defend against all enemy, foreign and domestic, I realized some time ago that the enemy is inside the wire. And the enemy are those Islamists who wish to bring their form of government through Sharia, their faith that is used as an opening for churches, for pastors, and for others to believe or hear this narrative that we all worship the same God, and you already identified. That's clearly not the case. And so we find that this battle is going on in the classrooms, in our courtrooms with Sharia law cases, and we've also had, certainly in our government and on our border. It is coming across our border. Now, we feel like we have a lot of great news with our President Trump, and my red hat there for our webcast viewers, and we want to say welcome to our webcast viewers, that this is not the savior. Donald Trump is a man. And so many folks have just said, take a big sigh, oh, wow, he's here, he can save us, I can stop being engaged. And that's the last he needs.
Boy, that's right.
He needs our prayers, first of all. He needs us to be engaged, and he needs to be engaged. And we're talking to one of the most engaged persons I know of who's fighting that battle down on the border. And the Gray Man is with us today. And the Gray Man has some unique qualifications and some unique skills. And he is a U.S. Army veteran, has served as an instructor in the Middle East studies with operational experience in Egypt, Panama, Bosnia, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. He's participated in over 40 watches, and he's going to talk about what a watch entails, but 40 of these down on the Texas border. Now, most of us would never, ever think of going down to the border because that's where the border folks are down there, our Border Patrol folks who are great patriots, who are down there serving 24/7. Why would you have to volunteer to go down there? And he's going to talk about what motivated him. And he's a leader, field leader for that organization. He travels widely and speaks on the Middle East and border security issues. He and I have known each other for quite some time. And he hosted the Gray Man Report on the Hebrew Nation Radio out of Salem, Oregon. So welcome to the show, the Lance Hoppus God, Family, and Country Show. Gray Man, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate being invited on.
And always, whenever you speak, you do something that I think is truly unique. You dedicate the show to those men and women who have lost their lives in this jihadist battle that we're at war, and most people don't even realize it. So let's start with the top of the show and tell us who you're dedicating the show to today.
Well, unfortunately, I have to get to dedicate it to 4 individuals who've been murdered by what I call stealth jihadists. Corporal Baldridge, Sergeant Bays, and Sergeant Hauk, all of the 101st Airborne Division in Afghanistan, were murdered by a stealth jihadist last month, masquerading as an Afghan soldier. And then recently, Justine Damon, and I know she has a different maiden name. I'm not going to try to pronounce it on the air because I don't know it. But she was killed by who I believe is a stealth policeman up in Minneapolis. When you look at everything around that instance, to include the fact that the officer is refusing to be interviewed, the only conclusion you can reach is he was doing it out of an act from his ideology. So in honor of their sacrifice, I'm going to tell the truth.
Well, and part of that truth, and I've had these discussions with Army officers about the number of deaths that we refer to as the green on blue deaths out there. And this, I think, is a direct result of our leaders, our military leaders, our civilian leaders, not letting our soldiers understand that the DNA, the DNA of Islam allows this deep-seated, hatred of non-Muslims to be allowed to not be exposed to our soldiers, to let them know how deep this goes, and that because you have someone working in your office, because you have someone vetted supposedly properly, that does not still pose a threat. And that, to me, is just unconscionable. So that's another whole show. That's another whole discussion. But let's just jump right into talk us about the border efforts that are going on and the organization that you work with down there, Great Man. So let us hear about them, because I think it's and also how, if people have to end up hearing this show, they want to get involved. So let's talk about that at the top.
Okay, absolutely. First off, we have to understand the challenge that our Border Patrol faces every day. Between Canada and Mexico, over 7,000 miles of border is being patrolled and secured by 13,000 fewer personnel than police New York City. All right, so it's a monumental effort they're doing, and fortunately, we now have a commander-in-chief who is allowing them to do their job. It's just that with any bureaucracy, this is going to take time to trickle down.
Right.
And so ever since 2006, there's been an organization called the Texas Border Volunteers, and their mission is to observe and report criminal trespassers, which is what they're categorized when they're on private land, to the Border Patrol for them to take action. And I joined them in 2013 once I was able to get to Texas, get my CHL, and go through their process. And they're a 501c4 organization. They're an educational organization, and they basically do everything on a volunteer basis. They provide transportation in the field and night vision, but we pay our own way in terms of food and taking care of ourselves and getting down to the border. And we not only have Texans that are members, we have people, farmers from Kansas, we have people as far away as Massachusetts and California that come out at their own expense to volunteer when we have a watch. And a watch is nothing more than going out in the field and taking up a position, a hidden position, a concealed position, what we call it, and observe who is coming across private property to get around the Border Patrol checkpoints in Brooks County. And then those individuals are reported to the Border Patrol, and they then respond and hopefully apprehend them. And as of a couple months ago, we had over 3,000 apprehensions credited to us, to the Texas Border Volunteer information, since their inception.
So people have a clear picture. This is not you going out and engaging with those who are crossing illegally. This is notifying officials who then take the appropriate. You're just another extra set of eyes and ears for them. Is that correct?
Yes, we're what we would call in the Army a force multiplier. We are out in the brush. We would prefer to stay hidden,
right?
Because, then, okay, if they want to continue to use the route and get picked up by the Border Patrol a mile down the road, that's fine with us. But the only time that we would confront them is if they just happen to be walking upon us, which has happened a few times to us, most notably one time when a human trafficking convoy decided to cross at the forked tree that my partner and I were at. They were crossing a fence. And then we just turn on flashlights and yell in order to scatter them. And
this is, and in the course of your experiences down there, you have obviously engaged and talked to so many of the Border Patrol agents who are great patriots, whose families send them off every day, hoping they come back, and realizing that they are as much in a threat environment as those who are going to Afghanistan, Iraq, or anywhere else in the Middle East, or wherever there's combat. It's basically a combat situation. Is that a fair assessment?
It is, because especially under Obama, the violence against border agents ramped up to the point where they were throwing rocks at windshields as they'd travel, on roads or in the brush. They would actually attack border agents in some instances. They are especially the gang members that came across.
Right.
And we've had Tango Blast gang apprehended. So we know that they're coming across back and forth, but they would attack them. There was an instance in which two technicians were attacked by what were suspected MS-13 gang members. They were supposedly taking them to where a group was hiding, and they turned on the officers, got one of the guns. Fortunately, we were very poor shots, and on the third round, the gun jammed, so the other officer was able to subdue them.
Right.
And they didn't even face charges.
Wow. we're speaking to the Gray Man. The Gray Man is an Army veteran who's been involved with border security, a volunteer organization down on our Texas border, Mexico border. He's been involved in over 40 of these watches down there. The Gray Man has had experience in instructing in the Middle East, in multiple countries, on the issues of terrorism and tactics and such. And one of the things that obviously, as an expert in this area, you've come across those border agents and your own research. Talk to us about this term called, that I saw, in some of the buildup to this, the transnational criminal organizations. People oftentimes, the media paints this as the mother and child who's crossing the border, who's obviously being hustled, or brought over by a mule, and that is someone from some of these organizations. But tell us from a practical standpoint, who are the transnational criminal organizations that are behind this? And let's talk specifically, after you talk generally, but let's talk about some of the jihadist groups, because a lot of people just can't believe that there are jihadists coming across our border south of here.
Right. Okay, well, these are the organizations that were formerly known as cartels. The U.S. government came up with the term Transnational Criminal Organization, TCO, and they essentially control the whole America or the Mexican border with America.
Right.
And you can go on open source and look at dozens of maps of the ever-changing territories that these organizations control. And part of the issue is that there's been a news blackout, that our news organizations aren't reporting the fighting in between the different organizations or the attacks on the Mexican police that occur almost weekly, like grenades thrown into police stations or convoys being attacked or police officers assassinated while pumping gas at a gas station.
Well,
things like that.
I will highlight for any of our listeners who want more information, Google up Brandon Darby with Breitbart.com. And
there you go.
Brandon is probably, in my opinion, the leading reporter who is not only talking about what the Gray Man is talking about here, those threats, but he's also talking about within the Mexico countries of what's happening to the media. Those who are being attacked and assassinated and killed for reporting, doing exactly what Brandon and others. And Brandon goes down there routinely, just like you have, Gray Man, and tells that story. So it is a third world, country in that sense that Mexico is not in control of its own borders, and that's what the Border Patrol is fighting. So specifically in terms of what your group has found, what are those links to the jihadist organizations, or at least where you see trails of jihadist links of those who are coming through the border?
Well, I'll start up at the macro level. The jihadist organizations have been in Central America, in South America, in Mexico for decades.
Right.
For your listeners who are old enough, remember the Hezbollah bombings in Argentina in the early 90s.
Right.
Well, Hezbollah's been in Mexico for over 20 years. They even use it on NCIS episodes. Oh, they're located at a Hezbollah training camp in Mexico. Well, duh, they do have those training camps.
Right.
They work with Hamas, so Hamas has been in Mexico for a couple of decades, but they were supplanted pretty much by the Islamic State. There's the report of the camp 7 miles from our border near El Paso. And then what we've seen is in recent years, we have identified people who are probable Arabs. We're not authorized to interrogate or question individuals that are apprehended or who surrender. But what we have found is things left behind from individuals who passed through. One was an Urdu phrase book, Urdu being one of the primary languages of Pakistan.
Right.
And the phrases that were underlined indicated that it was probably the coyote, the guy who leads the group across, talking to somebody who understood some English, maybe, and then he could underline a phrase because he spoke some English, and then he could look at the Urdu phrase and understand what was trying to be communicated. We've also, the Sheriff's Department in Brooks County recovered over $20,000 in Iranian reals from a vehicle that was pulled over, and illegal aliens jumped out and ran.
Wow.
And when they searched the vehicle, they found all this money there. let's see, some of the other things that we've discovered is different types of trail markings with Arabic inscriptions on them. And this is something that is just, you look at it. I mean, the first one that my partner showed me was in the dark. He goes, "Hey, look at this. There's some sort of markings on it," and I, put my flashlight on it.
And having been over the Middle East as many times as many years, you immediately could tell that this was not just some carvings on a tree, but this was clearly a sign.
I used to speak some Arabic, and so I look at it, and it's the word Allah. And I'm like, holy guacamole, what's going on here?
Right.
And it would happen to be in a mott that was used by illegal aliens.
Right.
And unfortunately, one of the other things we found there was what's known as a rape tree.
Right. Well, we're going to talk more about that in the second portion. We're coming up at the bottom of the show. Real quickly, I noticed in some of the notes I was working with that Catholic Charities. Talk to us about when Catholic Charities, people think of them as that they're helpful, and obviously they're involved in the refugee resettlement issue. But tell us how they're thwarting the efforts to provide security for those who live here in America.
Well, they've been pushing a one world open borders agenda. That translates to they will get I don't know if the Trump administration is doing it, but the Obama administration had the Border Patrol stop at Catholic Charity Services at McAllen before they would take the individuals to be processed. And Catholic Charity Services would help the illegals fill out the paperwork to apply for asylum. And Catholic Charity Services, we found out through a source, had been broadcasting into Mexico whenever the Texas Border Volunteers were coming. They'd say, watch out and avoid the Rio Grande area.
So like a weather report. They would put the weather report out on you guys.
Yeah, because the old gringos are coming down to hunt you.
Yeah, so that's a real thanks to all the Catholic charity folks out there for helping making the job that much tougher. We're at the bottom of the show here. We want you to come back. Lance, we've been talking to the Gray Man. How do people listen to the show if they missed this or that missed the first portion of it? How do they get to hear this podcast, Lance?
Life is easy, thank goodness. All you have to do, if you want to pass this message on to friends and family, is tell them that this show is podcast, and you simply go to 930amtheanswer.com, and that's where you will find the program that's being podcast today. The title of this show today is The Gray Man and Jihadists on the Border. The Gray Man and Jihadists on the Border. Now, we have all the programs that we've ever done that are cataloged in there, so you can go on. You can find any one of these shows that you want to listen to. This show today is The Gray Man and Jihadists on the Border. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. We're going to take a short news break. I'm Lance Hoppus with the God Family Country Show. You're listening to Roy White, my co-host for this hour, and our guest, The Gray Man. And we're going to be right back in just about 2 minutes. And we're back, the God Family Country Show, right here on this Sunday evening with retired Lieutenant Colonel Roy White and the Gray Man, talking about jihad on the border. Do you think that there's jihad taking place on the border? Have you and your family talked about that? Have you and your family talked about the possibility of jihadists in your own neighborhood, right here in San Antonio, or wherever it is you may be listening to this show at?
Or maybe they just not sure what jihad really means.
For the most part, Roy, people are not sure of it. And for the most part, everybody thinks that there's only one God, and it's Allah. Because
what you have right now is a narrative going on in the media, Western media, pushed by groups like CARE and ISNA and others, that jihad is that personal struggle. It's the inner struggle that, we're going to take away the feeling that jihad has negative connotations. Everybody's on a jihad when you're, trying to take that final exam and, you're struggling to. This is not what is defined by all four of the major Sunni schools. It is holy warfare.
And it is warfare in all forms.
And violence against those who are non-believers. So, and what we see on the border is a portion of that. And we're lucky because we're going to be putting out more information, but just the teaser, one of my most influential persons who's helped me gain the knowledge I have about Islam is a gentleman by the name of Dr. David Wood. Dr. David Wood is going to be coming here to San Antonio in late September. And Dr. David Wood will be here for several days conducting a series of discussions, and we hope a debate at one of the local universities. We're still working on the details. But he will be engaging in a debate and informing folks from a Christian perspective. And he has a wonderful testimony about his personal. He was an atheist, has been to prison for assault, for taking out a hammer to his father. Now you're thinking, now how could a guy like that be a witness? Well, God takes every piece of clay out there and can turn that into the finest, sculpture imaginable. And David Wood, with Acts 17 apologetics, has turned his life around and right now is doing some of the most cutting edge work, informing people on YouTube, social media, all different kinds of ways, and leads his group of witnessing to Muslims in some of the most charismatic and colorful ways that for young people and old people can get it. And his YouTube videos, over 1 million views, and all the ones, he's probably done 600-700 of them or more, but has been at the cutting edge of this. And he's going to be coming here to San Antonio to help our listeners get a better understanding of what jihad, what Islam is all about, and answer your questions. So we're looking forward to having him. And G416 Patriots, if you want to learn more about that, write to us at G416patriots@gmail.com, and they can get that information. We'll put them on our newsletter. And if they want to get the podcast, Lance, how do they get to that again?
You go to 930amtheanswer.com. That's 930amtheanswer.com, and you look for the God Family Country radio show. When you find the God Family Country radio show, you simply go to the title of the show that you wish to listen to. And this particular one today is The Gray Man and Jihad on the Border. So, Roy, what do we have going on with the Gray Man and Jihad on the Border right now?
Well, I think one of the most exciting things, and we were talking about at the break, was the change in attitude that's going on the border. Talk to us a little bit about the personnel you've come in contact with down there, and tell us a little bit about how the Trump administration and his election has changed the tone and tenor down there completely.
Sure. I think it was Breitbart that reported the change in morale instantly after Trump took office among the rank and file. And that is we continue to see that happen. I was in an area in which a landowner had invited some of us to be at, and what happened was a supervisor saw us at night and told us we couldn't be in this area, and said, you're restricted to this area. We had problems in the past, and you need to be careful. Okay. Well, we come back down a couple weeks ago, completely different attitude. There's a lot of new faces, a lot of people changed out. We don't even think that supervisor is there anymore. And when the people realized that we were there at the behest of this landowner, then they were, oh, yeah, hey, we appreciate you guys being here. In fact, at one time when they had pushed back a group back across the Rio that had been trying to cross, we asked, is there anything we could do to help? And they said, hey, can you get up on that dike road and cover that in case they try to go around where we have our guys positioned? So they were very friendly, very accommodating. And on the trip down, going down Highway 281, one of the things that I saw, which really encouraged me, was they have built a truck inspection point.
Right.
We'd seen it built during the years, and now it's finalized. Well, Trump changed the policy. Under NAFTA, you could exempt corporations from having their trucks inspected, and he ended that. And there was a big line of trucks waiting to be inspected. So this is another way to cut down on contraband coming over and human smuggling and illegals coming over.
Because if they know those trucks aren't going to be inspected, it doesn't take a brain surgeon and certainly the cartels are not brain surgeons, but they're smart enough to say, we just need to pay these truck drivers more money and put these people in them or smuggle drugs or do whatever else to bring them across the border. And I'm sure that how much was never being detected because of that.
Yeah. Before Trump took office, Border Patrol agents would come out from lunch and find illegals standing around his vehicle waiting to be turned in because of Obama's policies of catch and release.
Right.
Now Trump has issued a order saying, hey, if they're that close enough to the border, just march them to the border and send them back.
Wow. That is encouraging. And what we've also seen is, at least for immediately, the result has been a tremendous drop in the number of illegal immigrants who are coming across. But as you said in the break, that is merely a pause. Whenever tactics are changed in this battle, this warfare, the other side is doing what? What's going on there from that standpoint?
I think they were surprised about Trump being elected as Hillary was. So what they've done is they've taken an operational pause, and one of Murphy's laws is in every operation the enemy gets a vote. So, and they are the enemy. We have to realize that. They're trying to destroy our way of life. So what they're doing, I think, is they are seeing how they can get around this, and partly they do it by threatening companies that are trying to build the border fence and wall and security, and partly by looking at ways that they can, they're going to do A, so maybe if we do A+1, we can get around that. Because there's a couple things. Revenue stream from illegal immigration. They don't want to see that dry up.
Right.
But also there are essential things that have to get across, like drugs, like trafficked women, and like jihadists.
And weapons.
So, yeah. Hey, one of the weapons used at the Charlie Hebdo attack was one of the weapons from Fast and Furious.
Wow.
What does that tell you?
Well,
the ties between the cartels and the Islamists.
Well, we've been under attack from Islam since the beginning that our nation started. And a lot of folks are unaware that the very moment that we signed, the Declaration and separated ourselves from England, we removed ourselves from the protection that had been given to the British Empire because they were paying millions of dollars to pirates along the Barbary Coast, which is along the North African coast. And these were Muslims. They don't describe them as a Muslim pirates. They describe them as, and the moment that we became our own independent country, that protection went away and was a result or resulted in the Barbary War that was the birth for our Marines and really for our Navy. And so this fight has been going on since the beginning of our nation. And for us to believe that this is an avenue that will not be exploited by the Islamists and those who wish to do us harm from that part of the world are sadly mistaken. And as you highlighted in the first portion, this relationship of the Islamists have been going on for a long time between Hezbollah and Hamas and those who live in Central and South America, particularly for these transnational groups. Lance has got a question.
Gray man.
Yes.
What you've been talking about so far is, trafficking coming across the border, drugs coming across the border. But what specifically, because we're talking about jihad on the border, what specifically do you nail down, and does our personnel on the border nail down as Islamic jihad at the border, where we can say this is jihad coming at us from the world of Islam? Because, see, a lot of this sounds like drug activity. It sounds like, the cartels, the drug cartel. You follow what I'm saying? And,
exactly.
and I want the listeners to be able to take their minds and really put the center of the target right on what that jihad is on the border. I want the bullseye right on it.
Okay. First off, I want to tell you that I don't know how it is now, but under the Obama administration and even under Bush, we were not able, the public could not see the numbers of individuals who were apprehended from special interest countries. And of course, those special interest countries are the terrorist countries, the ones that are designated as state sponsors of terrorism.
And they would hide those numbers. Those numbers were not released.
Exactly.
Right.
You could do math.
We knew they were there.
Apprehended.
We knew they were there,
and
but they weren't being.
It came out to a couple thousand a year that were, when you do the math, it's not China, it's not Russia. You subtract all those folks. Gee, I've got 1,700 people left over from 9 or 10 different countries. So that's what's coming across. That's one thing. The second thing is that we had something like 900,000 people. This is a Border Patrol estimate. Came across in 2016. All right, over 900,000.
900,000 people.
Yeah. If only 1% of those were jihadists, only 1 in every 100, that would be equal to a light infantry division. 9,000 folks coming across our border.
Right.
And so, geez. And see, that's 954,000 is what the estimated got away, because Border Patrol will tell you they only get 3 out of every 10.
Okay,
and they apprehended 408,000.
Now, Gray Man.
Yeah.
Roy has given his definition of jihad. Please give our listener, because you're down there, you're active with us. What's your definition of jihad?
Well, jihad is any active means to further the implementation of Sharia on a non-Muslim population, and even on a Muslim population if they don't want to do it. So we have people coming across that become members of cells, and the good example is Hezbollah. There's a YouTube video, I'll try to find it and forward to you all, about an interview of one of our undercover operatives who was undercover with the cartels in Mexico. And he witnessed 2 meetings between the cartels and Hezbollah. And so, of course, the newspaper interviewer, or whoever it was, said, well, how come we haven't been attacked? And he said, it's because America is Hezbollah's cash cow. All these people have businesses in Lebanon, and they're making so much money out of the drug trade and out of human trafficking, they want that income stream to continue because it funds a jihad around the world. In 2008, in the Caribbean, a British warship intercepted a Colombian submersible filled to gills with cocaine.
Right.
Okay? Colombian cocaine. It was Hezbollah's cocaine that they had purchased.
It was from Hezbollah.
Yeah. They are in bed with trafficking. In fact, we believe that they've leased out routes to the jihadists. We were searching a wooded area, and, a mott is a group of trees. My partner came out of the mott, and there's a guy sitting on the ground about to open his lunch. He dropped the can and ran. We couldn't catch him. Okay. We did a search of the area. He was about to open a can of halal turkey loaf.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Why is somebody 70 miles inside the Texas border eating halal turkey loaf manufactured in New Jersey?
Now, real quick, tell the listener what it means for it to be halal.
It is the ritual killing of the animal in accordance with Sharia.
It would be the same as kosher for...
Except for the, in kosher, when animals are killed in that, they are done in a humane way. With halal, the health standards are not nearly as closely controlled, as well as studies have shown that the methodology for killing and draining the blood from those animals is far less humane. So for those PETA folks and others who are out there, it is still, and more importantly, it is, in cases of many places, halal is being forced upon communities. But in this case, but halal is the term we use to describe food that is approved for eating by Muslims.
That's the entire point, that halal is the approved food for
Muslims.
for Muslims.
You're not going to walk in the grocery store and ask for help. Yeah.
And that's the food that a Muslim or the people from the world of Islam would eat, just like the people that are Jewish would eat kosher food. It's a prescribed food. I have friends that are Jewish, and sometimes we have business meetings, but they're only going to eat that Jewish meal that was specially prepared for them. They will not touch and eat what I'm going to eat. So that's very important. That's very, very important.
That wasn't the first instance of finding halal food. We also found food that a big tube of chicken loaf that was left for people who were passing through. Enough to feed 3 grown men who'd been traipsing 20 miles through the Texas brush.
And you've also found, this is what is surprising, you've also found voter registration forms.
Yes. In fact, when they have the hearing, I think they're going to have a hearing on voter fraud. I want to go to that and submit these forms as evidence because we found them. They were partially buried by dirt at a windmill, and the windmill is used to pump water for the cattle. And there were tuna packs and beverage packs and about as trash. The illegals had just passed through. Well, here are 2 voter forms that are used to mail in to register to vote, obviously given to these folks once they cross onto our soil with the intent of registering illegal aliens to vote in upcoming elections.
You see, right there, again, great man, for the listener out there, jihad it's a full military operation. In Lieutenant Colonel Roy White sitting here next to me. I was in the Air Force in Vietnam. You were in the Army. People that were in the military understand a full military operation. A full military operation encompasses the political. It encompasses the religious. The psychological. It encompasses warfare. It encompasses everything, getting into the political voting systems, the politic of the people that you're working against.
Education, textbooks, all of it.
Everything. It's all phases. So these people are coming across with the intent that once they get here, they could go out and get themselves a brand new suit and turn around and walk into some political building, and they're going to be start working as a lobbyist or a politician or anything that they have to do to get next to someone, walk into a church, get next to a pastor, right? And start that process of bringing people to the world of Islam to be sympathetic.
Absolutely, and this is and prior to Trump administration, the Obama administration in cahoots with the volunteer organizations called the VOLAGs. Those are 6 of those are Christian. And Catholic Charities being one of the largest. Many of these who were arrested.
That's hard for Catholics to listen to.
Or detained. I understand that. But Catholic Charities from 2008 to 2013 received $2.2 billion in federal money. You talk about a separation of church and state. That they received 2.2 or 2.0 $1 billion in funds to help specifically these, quote, detainees. They don't like to refer to them as legal alien immigrants, detainees, and assisted them because they were getting paid $1,900 per person, for 4 months, as well as basing their budget on continuing services provided to these people while veterans, those who are in great need, or others in our community, our first obligation should be to our own community. And yet here we have the Catholic Charities organizations and Episcopals, the Lutheran Immigration Refugee Services. There are several others that have really provided the financial wherewithal and the government providing the funds to them. Even though separation of church and state can't have a cross-up somewhere, but we'll give $2 billion to the Catholic Charities to help. So these people coming across had so many things working in their advantage, but now that has stopped, and that's the good news that we can pass on to our listeners here is that, and folks like Dave, how do they get in touch if they want to be a volunteer and help out? Talk to us about how to make that work.
You can go online and look for TexasBorderVolunteers.org. texasbordervolunteers.org, and it'll take you to a site where you can download the application to join. You have to have a license to carry because you need a weapon for self-protection. We've never had an incident yet, but, you never need a gun till you need one badly.
I was going to ask you that question, Gray Man.
Yeah.
How often is it that you encounter people coming across our border from the other side that are weaponed up?
We have seen very few because we believe what they've done is, again, the enemy's smart. He doesn't want to have an incident with a volunteer organization because, what's the news headline going to be? Cartel attacks and wounds, private citizen on the border trying to protect us. So what they've done is they used to see drug convoys, backpacks. Those have moved out. We still believe there's human trafficking, but it's so well insulated that it's hard to find. We found it once, and we're still looking for it because, unfortunately, they found out that we found out, and they moved their operation. So they, in Brooks County, the Texas Border Volunteers don't see that much armed personnel. Not saying they won't in the future as things change. There is potential in other areas of the border to see armed personnel. One of my friends down in the Brownsville area, he had folks that he knows in Border Patrol that encountered and apprehended an armed group coming across the Rio in the Brownsville area. Well, so they're coming across in different places, and again, they get to choose when and where they cross.
Well, Gray Man, we want to say thank you for your service, and please thank all of the border agents that you run into down there and the border volunteers as you see them. Please pass on to them our thanks and great appreciation for the service that they're doing, and we hope our listeners will get involved.
Roy, Gray Man is out there getting after it. He gave his time and his life in the military, and he's now giving his time and his life in what he's doing in the work out there as a citizen. You're doing the same thing. I would appreciate it, Roy, if you'd tell the people out there how they can also become involved sitting at home with your education program with the books.
Truthandtextbooks.com is our website, but they can write to us at tnt.textbooks@gmail.com. This is a way that residents at their home can get trained on how to be social studies textbook reviewers. We have a class that starts on 1 August. So if you, from your home, you're concerned about what's being taught our children, why are our children being fed so much false information about Islamic ideology, as well as inaccurate information about Israel, the United States. So if they want to write to us at tnt.textbooks@gmail.com, please do that, or write to us at G416patriots@gmail.com. They can get on our newsletter. We'll give them more information about Dr. David Wood, who's coming in September, and our first meeting that'll be in September that we're excited about. So thanks again, Gray Man, for being on today. We'll be talking to you again soon. Lance, you're going to be back at the top of the hour, I understand.
We're coming right back at the top of the hour. And remember, folks, 930amtheanswer.com, the God Family Country Radio Show. And today's program was The Gray Man and Jihad on the Border. Okay? Don't go away. We're going to be right back for the next hour. Larry Brown's coming in to sit here next to me. We're going to shake things up a little bit more. Stick with us. We'll be back in about 5 minutes.